Let's see, our final question this week is from Rory. He wants to know about a caloric estimate for young children. Rory says, is there an estimate for calories per pound when it comes to feeding my almost 3-year-old, or any child that for that matter, say from 2 to 12? The teen years, of course, make marking the onset of self-consciousness and peer pressure, thus thwarting any biological hardwiring towards survival. Or is she still young enough to be biologically incapable of starving herself, at which point I should just trust that she has normally functioning satiety signals? I ask specifically about my daughter because, as is par for the course in America, she received antibiotics immediately after being born, so it's not a stretch for me to imagine that she could have some kind of gut imbalance that could cause hormone dysregulation with her leptin and ghrelin.
Good question, but my gut sense is Rory's probably being a little too worried about this. And it also, like, I don't know how early, how old did she say she's 3? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know there are some benchmarks out there. I think it's something like 16 or 18 calories per pound, or maybe it's 20 calories per pound. I forget off the top of my head, but it's a lot of calories generally. But even if you know this, then it's like you're going to weigh and measure their food, and then you need to weigh and measure what they didn't eat, and you need to separate out the protein, carbs, fat.
It's like a lot of work.
It's a lot of fucking work. Like I just, the risk reward deal, yeah. I just don't see. Yeah.
I think you feed them and they eat until they're
full,
especially if you're feeding them unprocessed, real foods. They're not gonna,
right.
They're not gonna overeat.
Right. And they will generally not undereat. And also kids tend to cycle.
They do cycle,
Zoe and Sagan, it's funny. So we don't have a pool, but our friend has a pool, and we've been taking them swimming. And on the days when they swim, they don't really eat that much. And you're like, man, they should be really hungry. But then I tell you what, the next day, they eat everything that's not nailed down. And they just don't want to get out of the water. So they might have like an Epic bar or something like that, and just kind of a little snack here and there, but they're so excited to swim that they won't get out. And they might do a half decent dinner, but then oftentimes they are so smoked by the end of the day of swimming. I mean, like 6 hours of swimming, they're in the sun and all the rest of that. They don't even really eat that much. Like they're almost like passing out at the table. But then the next day they get up and they eat everything, which I think is that's a great, in general, kids tend to do a really good job with that. And I think that this is something that, over the course of time, because of my kind of like powerlifting background for ages, I just kind of overate because I felt like I needed to eat more. And I finally, at almost 50, have gotten to a spot where it's like, if I just kind of sit on my duff all day, I don't eat that much food. And then on the day where I'm real active, I may lift weights and do 2 hours of jujitsu. I eat a lot of food that day. And then maybe even the following day, I'm like, man, I'm pretty hungry. And so I end up eating more. So that if we're not eating odd foods, I think that the appetite control mechanisms are very well in place. And I wouldn't worry about a round of antibiotics like displacing that stuff. It's a great question to ask, but I wouldn't be overly concerned about that. Anything else as a mom to cap that off?
I don't think so. I think it is cyclic. I mean, I think that's fairly normal, where one day they might eat a ton and the next day it tapers off a bit. And, she's not going to starve herself.
No. And the thing that we do, we kind of make it a speed bump method. We really kind of hold the kids' feet to the fire. It's like, you got to eat your protein, and then if you want some more of this other stuff, then we kind of open it up, and that works fine. And we have noticed, even within the 2 kids, like if Sagan in particular, who seems to kind of take after me a little bit more, at least in some ways, if she doesn't get enough protein, that kid gets cranky, real cranky, and it's just like a switch just flips. And then she'll eat and she's good. So I think she ends up potentially getting a little bit of these kind of blood sugar changes if she's not getting enough protein. And so you'll notice a little bit of variability on that. Whereas I think Zoe is a little bit more like you and just a little more even keel with regards to, she'll eat a lot of protein, but even if she doesn't, it doesn't seem to affect her quite the same way. But Sagan's also going through a growth spurt. So I don't know how much of that's going on. She's sleeping
15 hours.
Yeah. And she's just been sprouting. So that's a whole other crazy thing to this. And it's been funny all the way along. Like now that the girls are basically 7 and 5, the changes aren't quite as dramatic. Like they're in that, maybe up to about 3 years old, maybe 4 years old. It feels like every time you kind of get dialed in on one sequence, then they change and you've got to rejigger things, but they still change over time. And for sure right now, Sagan is growing a lot, sleeping a lot. And we noticed that if she doesn't eat well, she will get some cranky McCrankerkins going on. Yeah.
I think that's a wrap for this week.
Yep. Thank you guys for the awesome questions. Enjoy doing this as always. Most of my activity, at least for a while, is still over at Instagram at @DasRobWolf. This episode brought to you by
Drink Element Recharge, and hope you guys are all having a great and safe summer.
We'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.